You never expect to get a call from your 78-year-old father saying, "Some punk in a reflective vest just threatened to fine me for my lawn," especially not when your dad used to take down warlords for a living. It happened in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Florida, the kind of place where folks wave from their driveways and argue over grass height at HOA meetings. But this wasn't your average neighborly dispute. A self-proclaimed HOA enforcer, who wasn't even part of the actual HOA board, decided my dad's garden gnome collection was a code violation. Big mistake. What he didn't know: my dad isn't just some frail retiree. He's a former mercenary with a stare that could stop a dog mid-bark. And what came next? Let's just say this wannabe cop learned the hard way not to poke the wrong old man. The guy showed up in a neon vest, clipboard in hand, and the kind of smug grin only HOA busybodies seem to master. He didn't knock, just strutted right onto my dad's lawn like he owned the place. "You're in violation of HOA Code 14.2, excessive yard decor," he said, pointing at a ceramic frog smoking a cigar. My dad, in his usual weekend outfit, cargo shorts, white tank top, and socks with sandals, just looked at him over the top of his glasses. Calm, quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your gut tighten even if you don't know why. "I don't recall electing you," Dad said, his voice steady, "and I've never heard of Code 14.2. "I'm part of the enforcement committee," the guy said, puffing up. "If you don't remove those gnomes by tomorrow, you'll be fined $250. That's when Dad smiled. And here's the thing: when my dad smiles like that, it's not because he's amused. It's because he's sizing you up. I've seen that smile once before, when a guy in a bar in Nicaragua pulled a knife on him. That guy left with a broken wrist and a lesson in humility. Dad motioned to the old bench on the porch. "You want to write me a citation? Sit down first. Let's talk." The fake cop hesitated, clearly unsure. But then he did the dumbest thing possible. He sat. The fake HOA guy sat down, legs crossed, like he was in charge of something. Clipboard on his lap, pen ready, like he was about to issue a parking ticket in a war zone. Dad leaned back, arms folded, just watching him. Not a muscle moved, not even a blink. "You served?" the guy asked casually, eyes flicking to the small Marine Corps decal on Dad's mailbox. "No," Dad said. "Worse." There was a long pause, the kind that soaks the air in tension. The man chuckled awkwardly. "Worse than the Marines? What, like Navy SEAL?" Dad just smiled again, slow, measured. "You ever hear of Sangat? 1987. The clipboard guy blinked. "No. Should I have?" Dad nodded slowly. "Exactly." The guy tried to brush it off, suddenly tapping his pen against the metal clip. "Look, I'm just trying to make sure the neighborhood stays presentable. These lawn ornaments, they're against the community's aesthetic guidelines." Dad stood up slowly. No sudden moves, but something about the way he rose made the chair creak like it knew something was about to happen. "I've buried friends who never got to argue about gnomes," he said. "You're lucky that's your biggest problem today." The guy stood too, trying to regain control. "I'm just doing my job." "No," Dad said, stepping forward just enough to shorten the distance. "You're pretending to have one." The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, heavy, the kind that makes you aware of your heartbeat and every nerve in your body. Then Dad said it soft, almost like a whisper, but somehow it cut through the air like steel. "Leave the clipboard, and don't come back." The man hesitated. For a second, I thought he might actually leave. But then he made the second dumbest decision of the day. He smirked. "Oh, I get it," he said. You're one of those tough guy veterans who thinks the rules don't apply anymore. Just another old man clinging to past glory. That's when Dad took off his glasses and slowly wiped the lenses with his shirt. Anyone who's known him more than 5 minutes knows, when the glasses come off, something's about to go sideways. I'm not a veteran, he said quietly. I never served under a flag. I served under paychecks. The fake HOA cop frowned, confused. Dad looked him dead in the eye. No uniform, no rules, no oversight. I didn't follow orders. I sold them. The guy's grin faltered. Just a flicker, but it was enough. I once babysat an arms dealer's son for 2 weeks in Sierra Leone, Dad continued. The pay was decent, but the work, ugly. You know what kind of man gets hired for that? The man swallowed hard. Then Dad leaned in, voice low, sharp. Not someone who puts up signs about mailbox paint. Suddenly, the guy's walkie-talkie crackled on his belt. A scratchy voice came through. Unit 3, are you still with the subject on Gardenia Lane? Do you need backup? Wait, Unit 3? Dad's eyes dropped to the radio. You're not just a fake HOA cop, are you? The man didn't answer, but now he looked less smug and more caught. Dad stepped back slowly. Who are you working for? The man turned, fast, too fast. He bolted off the porch and jogged down the driveway toward a white SUV with no plates. He didn't look back. Dad didn't chase him. He just watched. Then, almost to himself, he muttered, "They found me." The SUV peeled out of the cul-de-sac, tires screeching, leaving the scent of burnt rubber and cheap cologne hanging in the air. Dad didn't flinch. He just stood there on the porch, arms at his sides, staring into the distance like he was watching something only he could see. I got there 10 minutes later, still in my work clothes, coffee in hand. I didn't even make it past the walkway before I felt it. That strange electricity in the air, like the seconds after a lightning strike. Dad, I said, what the hell happened? He turned to me slowly, the way someone turns when they've been yanked back from a different time and place. He looked older than usual, not weaker, just heavier, like something had returned that he'd spent years burying. I need you to check the security footage, he said. I blinked. The Ring camera? He nodded. And the one in the birdhouse. The real one. Right. The fake birdhouse. The one he claimed was just a hobby project, but had its own solar panel and encrypted cloud storage. Of course. I pulled up the feed on my phone. The man's face was there, clear as day. No HOA badge. No ID. Just a vest and that smug clipboard. I zoomed in on the SUV as it backed out. My stomach twisted. Dad, there's a patch on the dashboard. He leaned in. When he saw it, his jaw tightened. It wasn't HOA. It wasn't even local enforcement. It was a faded emblem, stitched in black and gold. A serpent wrapped around a sword. I've seen that before, he said, voice flat. I burned it off a jacket in Istanbul, 1994. My mouth went dry. Who are they? He didn't answer right away, just turned and looked down the street, calm but calculating. They're not the kind of people who knock twice, he said, which means we've got about 48 hours before things get complicated. Then he walked back inside. As the screen door creaked shut, he called over his shoulder, "Pack a bag, and bring the .38 from the drawer. We're going dark." We didn't talk much on the way out of town. Dad had us on a backroad route through Central Florida, the kind of roads where cell phone signals go to die and all the gas stations sell boiled peanuts. He drove like he'd done this before, because he had. He didn't bring much. A beat-up duffel, a manila envelope sealed with red tape, and an old revolver he kept wrapped in a mechanic's rag. I didn't ask questions. I just drove, eyes on the mirror. By the time we stopped at a rundown motel outside Ocala, I finally broke the silence. Dad, who are they? Why now? He looked out the window for a long moment, then reached into the envelope and pulled out a photo. It was grainy, black and white, 5 men in desert fatigues, squinting under the sun. One of them was Dad, younger, beard thicker, eyes harder. They called us the Quiet Five, he said. We handled things governments couldn't afford to admit existed. Extraction, disposal, silence. What happened to the other 4? He paused. 3 are dead. 1 disappeared. We made a pact years ago. If any of us were ever compromised, the rest would vanish too. I swallowed. So why didn't you disappear? He finally looked at me, really looked. Because of you. Because of her. He pointed to the photo, where a small hand-drawn heart had been inked on the corner. My mom's name. That's when I understood. He wasn't just running. He was finishing something, closing a loop that had been open for decades. The next morning, he made a call from a payphone. I don't know what he said, but 3 hours later, a package arrived at the motel. No return address. Inside was a small burner phone already ringing. He answered, listened, then nodded once. He turned to me. It's done. They're backing off. I stared. Just like that. He smirked. Nothing's ever just like that. But let's just say, I still have a few debts owed in the right corners of the world. I exhaled, finally letting myself relax for the first time in days. As we headed back toward home, I asked one last question. So, no more fake HOA cops? He chuckled. If the next one shows up with a clipboard, I'll let the sprinklers handle it.